The river bends quiet around a bluff in western Tennessee, the water slow and brown beneath the April sun. Today it looks peaceful, but on April 12, 1864, this same curve of river ran red. The old trees still whisper when the wind shifts, and locals say the ground remembers. Beneath the soil, beneath the manicured trails and historical plaques, something else was buried. A memory, a wound, a question that never stopped bleeding. Was Fort Pillow a battle or a massacre? For more than a century, the story split families and textbooks alike. In the North, it was a rallying cry. In parts of the South, it became a rumor best left unspoken. Each generation built its own version of what happened when General Nathan Bedford Forrest's cavalry stormed the Union garrison perched on this bluff. Some said it was vengeance for raids and insults. Others said it was a crime born of hate. And in the silence between those versions, the truth decayed. Until now, an attic, dust motes turning in the shaft of afternoon light. A cedar chest creaks open. Inside, wrapped in a strip of linen gone the color of old bone, lies a diary. Its leather has cracked, the spine nearly gone, and across the cover a hand has scratched only initials, JMH. The ink on the first page has rusted brown, but the words are still legible. I write what I saw, not what they told. That single sentence would reopen one of the Civil War's darkest arguments, because the man who wrote it had been there. A Confederate private whose name vanished from the rolls the same week Fort Pillow fell. His diary, hidden through generations, is now the voice no one expected, a voice that may confirm what official reports tried to bury, or reveal how legends twist truth until no one recognizes it. History is rarely lost by accident. Sometimes it's sealed away on purpose, and when something that was meant to stay silent finally speaks, the past doesn't whisper, it roars. The Civil War diary that should have never seen the light of day, Fort Pillow Revisited. This is History Re-Echoed. Stay with us, because what this diary reveals will challenge everything you thought you knew about that day on the Mississippi, the soldiers, the orders, and the silence that followed. Revelation. The light is soft and heavy, falling through a single square window thick with cobwebs. Dust drifts in the air like pale smoke. Margaret Hale kneels beside a cedar chest with iron bands dulled by rust. She hesitates before touching it, the kind of hesitation you feel when opening a coffin, not a box. Her family called it the old trunk, but no one had dared open it for decades. Her grandfather once said, "Some things are better left shut." The lid groans when she lifts it, releasing a breath that's been trapped since the early 1900s. Old tobacco, paper, cedar, and something faintly metallic. Inside lie the relics of lives turned to memory. A tarnished belt buckle stamped CSA, a pocket Bible with pages crumbling at the edges, a letter sealed in wax but never sent. Beneath them, wrapped in a strip of linen yellowed and stiff with age, lies a small leather book. Its cover is warped, its strap eaten through. The initials are still visible, pressed by hand, JMH. When Margaret opens it, the paper sighs. The ink has bled in places but holds a dark reddish tint, not quite brown, not quite black. Each page is numbered in careful script. On the first page, a single line stretches across the top. I write what I saw, not what they told. She frowns. The next page begins with a date, April 11th, 1864. The entry reads like a man speaking into confession. Orders changed. Riding west again. Men are restless. Word says the fort holds thieves and Yankees. Captain says no prisoners if they resist. The handwriting wavers, fast, uneven, as if written on horseback. A drop of something darker than ink sits beside the word resist. Margaret flips ahead, another entry. April 12th, dawn. The bluff in sight, smoke already thick. We shouted surrender. Some did, some ran. I don't know who gave the call. But the ground moved like thunder when we charged. God forgive what I saw next. She stops reading. The attic feels smaller now, the air thinner. For a long time, her family had refused to speak of her ancestor, Private John M. Hale of the 13th Tennessee Cavalry. Her grandfather called him the shame of the Hales, a man who turned against his own. No one ever explained what that meant. They just buried his name along with his memory. But here in her hands was his voice, trembling, desperate, and brutally clear. Margaret flips to the last entry. The handwriting has grown frantic. They called it victory. I call it murder. If this book is found, may it speak where I cannot. JMH. The candle beside her guttered. For a moment, she thought she heard something shift in the trunk, but it was only the pages settling, like someone exhaling after a long silence. She doesn't sleep that night. Instead, she sits by the window as the Tennessee night presses against the glass, reading by the weak light of a desk lamp, each word tightening the space between myth and memory. By dawn, she knows the diary doesn't belong in her hands. It belongs in the light, where truth can be tested. Margaret wraps the diary in fresh linen, tucks it in a box, and writes a single line on the label. For verification, Tennessee State Archives. As she seals the package, she hesitates, then adds a note in smaller writing beneath. My family said he shamed us. I think he was trying to save us. The camera lingers on the box as the lid closes. The wind outside rises, rustling through the trees. Somewhere unseen, the Mississippi moves past the bluff where Fort Pillow once stood, and the past begins to stir again. The expert analysis scene. Fluorescent lights hum overhead. The diary rests on a padded tray under glass. Around it, 3 conservators move with the reverence of surgeons. Their gloves are white, their instruments small, scalpels for lifting fibers, brushes for dusting time itself. Margaret Hale stands behind the observation window, hands clasped. She watches as they turn the pages for the first time under controlled light. Each page releases a faint crackle, as if the paper resents being touched. We'll start with a material profile, says Dr. Alan Brooks, chief conservator, in a low tone meant more for the room than for her. He runs a gloved fingertip along the edge of the paper and stops. This isn't pulp, he murmurs. It's rag stock, linen and cotton fibers. Handmade, 1860s for sure. The technician adjusts the ultraviolet scanner. A beam of violet light glides across the page, illuminating ghostly veins of ink. Iron gall, says Brooks, squinting, mixed with lampblack, common Civil War ink, but there's something else. He signals to the assistant. The screen fills with microscopic detail, flecks of reddish matter trapped between fibers. Brooks leans closer, his tone shifts. Protein residue, not contamination, it's absorbed. Blood, asks the assistant. Most likely, someone wrote this in the field. The room falls silent. The hum of the machines becomes thunderous. The ink wasn't just chemical, it was human. For cross-verification, they bring in Dr. Charlotte Meeks, a handwriting expert from the Smithsonian. Her voice carries a crisp academic calm that cuts through the tension. Let's see if the hand matches the record, she says, leaning over the magnifier. On a second monitor, they pull up a Confederate payroll ledger from 1864, 13th Tennessee Cavalry. There it is, signed 3 times, Private John M. Hale. She traces the loops and strokes on screen. Same hand, slight tremor in the descenders. That's stress, field writing. He was moving when he wrote this. Margaret exhales quietly. The name that her family buried was now alive again, confirmed in ink and blood. Dr. Meeks turns a page and freezes. Wait, she whispers, look here. The camera moves in close. On the bottom of a page, Hale had scratched out a word, attack, and replaced it with execution. That's not a slip, Meeks says, that's conscience. Dr. Brooks lifts his eyes from the microscope. He was documenting something he wasn't supposed to. Across the table, historian Dr. Ellis Grant, a Civil War scholar known for his work on Fort Pillow, reads the line aloud. They dropped their arms, and we kept firing. The air changes. For a long moment, no one speaks. Finally, Dr. Grant breaks the silence. That line doesn't exist in any Confederate field report. He pulls up a set of official documents, the same battle reports filed under Forrest's command. The camera zooms in on the neat cursive. Enemy routed, fort secured, casualties moderate. Grant overlays Hale's entry beside it. Same date, same sequence, only one tells what came after the surrender. The archivists exchange glances, a mix of awe and dread. What they're seeing doesn't just add to history, it contradicts it. If this goes public, Meeks murmurs, it rewrites Fort Pillow. That afternoon, they prepare a formal authentication request for the National Civil War Museum. The package leaves under chain of custody, escorted by a state courier. 2 days later, Margaret's phone rings. The caller ID reads, National Civil War Museum, Harrisburg. She answers. A man's voice, low and deliberate, comes through the line. Ms. Hale, this is Dr. Raymond Keats. We've completed the secondary verification. Pause. It's real, he says finally. Every fiber, every stroke. And if these entries are ever made public, they'll force historians to reopen one of the ugliest chapters of the war, possibly the one everyone agreed to leave closed. Margaret says nothing. You need to decide, Dr. Keats adds, whether you want the truth to live or stay buried like the man who wrote it. The call ends. Margaret stands at the window, watching a slow rain blur the world outside. On the screen behind her, the ultraviolet scan still glows faint blue, revealing words the naked eye can't see, faint lines between paragraphs, like thoughts the writer tried to erase. The flag was down. Still we fired. They screamed we were devils. Maybe we were. The camera lingers. The rain outside grows heavier, tapping like fingers against glass. For the fallout. Security lights hum against glass display cases. The diary sits on a table beneath a plexiglass dome, a red confidential review tag attached to its base. Dr. Keats stands beside it, pacing. Across from him, 2 men from the Department of Defense archives whisper in clipped tones. One closes a folder, the motion deliberate. You understand, one of them says quietly, this isn't just a historical curiosity. Fort Pillow has implications, political ones, racial ones. You put that on exhibit and you open wounds no one's ready to see again. Keats doesn't answer. He just stares at the diary, the small cracked book that somehow feels heavier than the entire archive around it. We can't just pretend it doesn't exist, he says finally. Pretend, the other man smiles thinly. That's how history survives. A storm rattles the windows. She's surrounded by copies of the diary's pages spread out like puzzle pieces across the table. Headline clippings flicker on her laptop screen. Forrest at Fort Pillow, hero or butcher. Massacre or myth. Historians divided over new evidence. On the screen, a talking head debates with another. If the diary's authentic, it's the first Confederate admission of deliberate fire on surrendering troops. Or, counters the other, it's a forgery crafted to smear a man long dead. The host leans in. Then why the blood and the ink? Silence, cut to commercial. Margaret closes the laptop. The thunder outside feels like cannon fire. She whispers to herself, they're fighting the same war, just with words now. The truth about Fort Pillow was never settled. It was managed, shaped by politics, buried under reconciliation. After the war, Union survivors testified that surrendering men were shot where they stood. Confederate reports denied it. The official inquiry declared it a massacre, but Southern writers called it vengeance. For a century and a half, the truth has depended on which flag you saluted. She flips one last page in the diary. A torn scrap falls loose, a letter fragment, half burned, half legible. They told us to give no quarter, even to those who dropped their arms. I hear them still. She sits back, the room dim except for the glow of a single desk lamp. A voice message lights up her phone. Dr. Keats again. His tone is low, uneasy. Margaret, we've had a request from Washington. They're asking for the diary to be transferred for national preservation. Pause. You should know, once it leaves the state, it may not come back. Margaret looks at the diary, the cracked leather, the rusted clasp. She whispers, they buried his name once, not again. The museum's press release hits the morning cycle. A newly authenticated Civil War diary may shed new light on the 1864 Battle of Fort Pillow. The contents, described as deeply disturbing, are currently under restricted access pending federal review. The battle for Fort Pillow ended in 1864, but the war over its memory never did. Every document, every silence, every missing page still echoes with the same question, not just what happened, but why it was forgotten. And sometimes when the truth finally surfaces, it doesn't free us, it tests us. This is history re-echoed, because the past never stays buried for long. Mist curls above the Mississippi. The grass glistens with dew where blood once fell. The bluff overlooks a river that has carried too many secrets downstream. A single figure walks the trail, Margaret Hale, coat wrapped tight against the morning wind. She carries the diary in her hands, no longer boxed, no longer hidden. The leather catches the first light of day. A park ranger nods as she passes, not asking what she holds. Some silences, even now, are self-explanatory. She stops by a weathered marker. Fort Pillow Battlefield, April 12, 1864. Her voice, soft, trembling, overlays the scene. He said he wrote what he saw, not what they told. I think I understand that now. Maybe the hardest part of remembering is realizing how many chose to forget. The camera lingers on her hand, brushing across the stone. The sound of the river fades into a low, solemn drone, half wind, half heartbeat. The truth of Fort Pillow was never one story. It was a war between them, between what soldiers saw and what the nation wanted to believe, between confession and denial, between memory and myth. Private John Hale vanished from the record in April of 1864. For 160 years, his silence was convenient. But in the end, he spoke again, through blood, through ink, through the hand of a descendant brave enough to listen. Sunlight begins to break through the haze. And maybe that's what history really is. Not a collection of victories, but a ledger of our denials. A record of every truth we buried to keep living with ourselves. The display reads, Private John M. Hale, Personal Diary 1864, donated by the Hale family, 2024. Below it, a small plaque, May we learn from what we choose to remember. A group of schoolchildren walks past their teacher reading aloud from a plaque nearby. They don't notice Margaret, standing quietly at the edge. One child glances up, curious, then back at the book. For a brief moment, the sound of the pages turning blends with the rustle of the trees, like the past breathing again. The diary never sought forgiveness, only acknowledgement. In every word, you can feel the war still smoldering, not between North and South, but between truth and comfort. And maybe that's the real battle still being fought, not on fields of blood, but in the archives, in the silences, in the stories we choose to tell. For over a century, the truth of Fort Pillow was a ghost, whispered, rewritten, or forgotten. But history has a pulse, and when it stirs, even time itself listens. I'm your narrator, and this is History Re-Echoed, where buried truths speak again.